Hey yo, salute to the people. It's the social forecast. Today is Wednesday, February 5th, 2020, about 7:45 a.m. And I hope you all do something today to further your goals and to help you realize your dreams. Let's get into it. I was just having a discussion with a coworker of mine, and we were talking about customer service, younger kids who are working, who don't want to work, who are lazy, who feels like they have the luxury to say certain things within that work environment is not their job to do or not for their shift to do, whether it is or it isn't. I was raised and I was taught when I started working, saying that something is not your job to do is something you don't say. If it's something that needs to be done, that is within your capability to do, and within the station or position that you have at that with that employer, then every single person is responsible for making sure that it gets done. So we're talking, and it hit me. And I don't know what state you all live in, but in the state of Massachusetts, there's a directive from the state to all employers that by the year 2023, minimum wage has to be $15 an hour. So what they're doing is, and it started 2 years ago, it was a 5-year plan, that minimum wage will be bumped up every year until 2023 and would finish at $15 an hour. So it started at 11, right? They bumped it to 11 from wherever it was. I think it was $8 in 2011, I want to say. No, I'm sorry. In 2017. Then in 2018, they bumped it up to 12. And then last year, they bumped it up to $12.75. In January, they'll bump it up again, I believe, another 75 cents, and then they'll bump it up, whatever the remainder is, to get to 15 by 2023. I got my first job at 14. In the state of New Jersey, you had to be 14 with working papers to be able to work, have an after-school job, and they limited the amount of hours that you could work per night. I think it was like 3 hours on a school night, not past a certain time, and no more than, I think, like 15 or 20 hours a week. Cool. I was happy to have an after-school job. I was happy with whatever I was making. Minimum wage at that time was $5.25 an hour. So just to put this in perspective, I have a 14-year-old who will be 16 in the next 2 years. So that means by the time that she's ready to go get her first job, she's going to be making $15 an hour, 3 times more than what I was making at her age. Now, some people will argue, okay, but the cost of things in general, inflation, cost of living, has gone up considerably since 1998 when I was 14 and got my first job, granted. But at 14, 15, 16, you don't have a cost of living. You don't have any bills. You're still a minor. You're still living under the care of your parents who are providing for all of those things. Now, to put it in perspective even further, there are adults, grown-ass people, who are figuring out ways to provide for their families and pay adult bills making $15 an hour. Now you talk about a 16-year-old making $15 an hour. That is excellent pay for someone that young. Even if you're a college student and having to pay for books, or if you're putting yourself through school, without any other bills, and just focusing on putting yourself through school as an 18-year-old, $15 an hour is enough to do that and focus on your schooling and education, and not have to worry about how am I going to pay for this semester? How am I going to buy my books? That's decent money for anybody in that age group from 16 to, let's say, 22. That's good money for a single person with no real bills, no rent for the most part. Maybe you have a car, you might have a car payment and your insurance. Now here is what ties all that up into a circle. When I see these young kids, these teenagers, or these kids in their early 20s, who don't want to do shit at work, who have poor customer service when I walk into an establishment as a consumer, who aren't attentive, who don't know how to make eye contact, who don't know how to engage with the customer, who don't know how to properly interact with a customer who has a complaint or a gripe about service or whatever the case may be. To me, there's never an excuse, because if you're going to have a job in customer service, then you should learn some customer service skills. But when you're making 3 times the amount of what the rest of us adults made at your age, and if you're older, it was even less, and we were happy to get what we got and happy to be able to do work and was proud of the work that we did. When you kid, it's like a slap in the face to know that you kids are going to be making $15 an hour, but you go to fucking McDonald's past 10 p.m. and you can't even get fresh food. Or you're telling me that the shake machine is down when clearly you took the shit apart because you didn't want to have to make shakes for people past a certain time because you didn't want to have to clean the machine too late. Like, we don't know all the tricks. Like, we haven't tried this shit before when we were younger. It kills me how the people who beg for the most feel the most entitled. And y'all really need to knock this shit off. And these employers, I feel like, if the employers are going to have no choice but to raise minimum wage, which I'm for, right? I'm for a livable wage. I'm for people who work 40 hours a week to provide for their families should make financially enough to be able to do that. If at the very least you can't get ahead, you should at least be able to pay your bills when you go to work every day. You should have something to show for it, with at least at a bare minimum your bills being paid. But since these kids don't want to work, and since minimum wage is beyond what I feel a lot of them deserve, then these employers should start getting smarter and stop hiring these young high school and college kids who don't want to work, who clearly don't deserve $15 an hour because the service they provide is so subpar. Start hiring people who have real life responsibilities. That should be, in my opinion, a prerequisite for getting a job, right? You look at experience, of course. You look at a person's qualifications, of course, references, whatever. But having real life responsibilities, in my opinion, is one of the best ways. After you look at qualifications, after you look at experience, one of the best ways to determine if someone's going to be a halfway decent employee, I think a good general rule of thumb would be, what are your life responsibilities? Do you have children? Do you have a place where you live where you have to pay rent? Do you have obligations? Do you have a car payment that you have to make? Not a car payment your parents are paying for you. And do you have insurance you need to pay? Real life responsibilities correlate directly, to me, with someone needing to take their job seriously versus someone who just works for extra money and really don't give a shit, because at the end of the day, mommy and daddy is going to cover whatever bill they have if they need to, because they may have that luxury. And those are the ones you see not really caring about their jobs in that age group. And obviously it would be discrimination. Obviously it would be illegal to do. But I just feel like there has to be an offset. We cannot have these people in this age group, these kids, and I'm emphasizing, who don't want to work, don't have the attitude, don't have the mindset, willpower, discipline, whatever you want to call it. Stop giving them jobs, especially with minimum wage going up, for them to make $500 and $600 a week with no bills, because that's a hell of a salary when you don't have any bills. I would love to make $500 or $600 a week with no bills. That's a decent living. So for a lot of these adults who don't have real life experience, life skills, real work experience, and have to do menial jobs, going to be making the same $15 an hour, right? Or barely above that. We, for those of us who are in that bracket, don't want to go into an establishment seeing an 18-year-old, 19-year-old making the same amount not giving a shit about their job, knowing that we were raised right, we were taught right, and we go to work to do our jobs properly. And what's the offset? What is the reward for that? Now, luckily, I'm a person who's not making minimum wage. Luckily, I'm a person who's making well enough above that to where that doesn't really affect me. But just from a customer service standpoint, as someone who has been in customer service for over 20 years, is nothing worse than when I see a kid who clearly doesn't give a shit about their job, clearly doesn't give a shit about a customer, doesn't even care enough to follow the policies at their workplace, because it don't take a rocket scientist or even someone who works where that person works. It doesn't take anybody with half a brain to see that a lot of these kids aren't even doing the bare minimum that they should be. So it's to these employers, figure out a creative way to, I don't know, filter out some of these individuals, because with minimum wage going up, the job market is becoming more competitive. And so many people are saying, well, fuck this job, but I can go right down the street and work at McDonald's for the same 15 an hour. Or fuck this job where I have to actually think and I can just go bag groceries for $15 an hour, or go sweep floors at a convenience store and ring up a few customers for $15 an hour with no bills and no real life obligations. It sends a bad message to the people who do what they're supposed to. And not only that, it makes it more difficult in an age when people are already shopping online more than they're shopping in brick and mortar stores. We're seeing major giants like Sears, Macy's, JCPenney close hundreds of stores down because of these companies that are available to consumers online, where you don't even have to leave your house to shop anymore. You don't have to leave your house to buy clothes. You don't have to leave your house to buy groceries. Anything you want now can be brought right to your front door. And so employers need to smarten up with what customers are left that actually go out and into establishments to shop for the things that they need from day to day. We would much rather not have to deal with these little brats who clearly weren't raised right and don't have any inkling of work ethic that would substantiate and justify them making what, at least in the state of Massachusetts, minimum wage is and what it's going to be. And there are other states. There are other states like Washington State, cities like Seattle, where minimum wage is $15 an hour. There are places like New York where minimum wage is going up. Minimum wage is going up everywhere. But for the work that is output, it doesn't calculate. So I just wanted to stop talking my shit about that. Let me know what y'all think about it, because I'm sure anybody who's ever walked into an establishment, my age group or older, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Anyway, man, it's a social forecast. Oh, I'll leave y'all with something. Life is a series of experiences and moments that either instigate or inspire love or hate. I don't pretend to know everything. I just know what I know. It's the social forecast. Peace and love.